This section of material is going to focus on some applied breeding concepts and selection practices that we can utilize in our flocks or herds, and the principles are pretty sound across all livestock species. So we're going to review some basic genetic principles, we're going to talk about the key concepts for selection and breeding, and outline some tools that can be used for herd improvement. So why do we need to have a selection plan? The first thing is that we have to provide enough replacements for our flock or herd, and we generally shoot for about a 20% replacement rate, meaning that on any given year we're replacing about 20% of our flock. And so for the sheep unit, we're now at 100 ewes, so that's about 20 ewe lambs that have to be ready to replace some older ewes that will be getting culled out. These selection plans will allow you to make the best opportunity possible to make genetic change and progress. So if you're wanting to improve phenotype or growth rate or carcass quality or wool or anything, having a plan is going to allow you the best opportunity to make that change and progress. And with that, you should be improving the fitness, utility, and profitability of your operation. And so the sheep or goats or whatever species you're dealing with should be when we talk about fitness from the standpoint health and well-being and adapting to your environment and performing at the level you need them to. So selection is a process, and it's a never-ending cycle. I kind of picture it as a circle, but you're always hoping that circle is moving towards your goal, so getting closer and closer to your goal as you progress with your production plan. And so there's inputs, and that can vary. The basic inputs: feed, nutrition, genetic seed stock, those types of things. You're going to go through the process of selection and then look at the offspring, and you're going to say, okay, this worked, this didn't. And so just an example, say maybe you have 2 or 3 rams and you breed your ewes to them, and you're looking at that lamb crop and you're like, these lambs fit what we're trying to do, these lambs not so much, okay? So we're going to focus on this genetic line to enhance what our sheep look like, just as an example. But you've always got to have that feedback process. And that's the thing, is a lot of times people spin their wheels inputting and inputting and inputting, but never measure their output and apply that feedback. And so that's where truly successful producers will utilize that feedback mechanism and make some decisions based upon that. So in general, when we're dealing with livestock selection, these are the process that we're going through every fall and spring. Which females are we breeding? Which males are we going to use? How are we going to match them up? Which ram goes in with which group of ewes? What progeny are we going to allow? So we've got lambs on the ground right now, and we're already trying to identify potential replacement ewes and see how they develop and grow, and monitor what we want to keep back in our flock. We actually may raise a couple of rams this next year to try to market and sell as well. So there's always these decisions to be made, and it's probably, for me, one of the funnest parts, because it's like opening Christmas presents when you get the offspring and you've invested this time and energy into considering these matings, and then you get high quality livestock. And it's kind of fun, because if I go back to pictures of what the sheep unit lambs looked like when I started 15 or so years ago, and see where our sheep are at now, we have made a tremendous amount of genetic progress in muscle mass, carcass yield, and all of those types of things. I just wish we could quantify it. And so I've been striving to work to have better data management so that we can quantify our genetic progress. So you need to have production goals. This is like anything. Without a goal, how do you know where you're headed? It's like having a roadmap. And so are you wanting to improve production and production efficiency? avoid inbreeding, minimize inbreeding, utilize certain types of inbreeding, maybe to concentrate genetics. Are there faults that you are needing to correct? And so for us, using the sheep unit as a model, we always want to make sure we're working to improve growth rate and improve muscle mass. We want to have thick, muscular sheep that grow extremely well and that are easy feeding sheep. So whenever I can measure feed efficiency, I do. We've been working to correct physical faults, like we raise show lambs. And so we need to place a selection pressure on how they look phenotypically. And so we've been really developing our lambs from a muscle mass and through their hip structure. But the next area we got to kind of work on is probably their front ends a little bit. And so, but it's definitely a process, and we're working on one area and hitting the next. Some of the challenges in selection is the balancing of, okay, we need meat production, we need reproduction, we need growth rates, we need all of these things. And that selection is of complex interrelated traits. It'd be one thing if we were the dairy industry, where they have actually done single trait selection for many years, where the focus has been on milk production and milk quality. That's it. That's what they've cared about. And so they have done a phenomenal job of focusing on that trait. But some other things have sometimes gone to the wayside, like reproductive rates or perhaps growth rates or anything like that. And so it's how do you balance all of these things in a selection program? And so there's some things that we will always make sure animals have sound carcasses. That's the number one thing. These animals become meat at some point, whether they go through a 4-H or FFA member, they're going to ultimately be a meat product. And so I will never give up on carcass quality. That's always in our selection equation, so to speak. And so is reproductive rate. If we don't have live lambs on the ground, then we don't have anything to market. And so we balance for all of these things. When you have more traits, though, you're not able to make as rapid a progress as if you were to do a single trait selection plan. There's some things that we can do, and that's really evolving in today's society. Artificial insemination, last 10 years, has become huge for the sheep industry, particularly the show sheep side of things, because now we have access to genetics that we have never had access to before, and frankly, we could never afford. And that has really changed our program to be able to do that. It's still not as easy as like with beef cattle or dairy cattle or even goats, but it's available. Embryo manipulation and transfer, that's something that is huge. We don't do it because I just don't feel like our seed stock, we're quite at the level to develop embryos and sell those and do some of that. But the high-end producers do that. Cloning, gene transfer, so much genetically now with QL or quantitative trait loci mapping, gene editing, things like that are just amazing tools that are starting to become something that can truly be used in selection programs. And that's exciting that we're going to be able to capitalize on so much new technology from here on. You're going to see some amazing changes in how we do selection of livestock, I think, over the next 5 to 10 years. We're going to wrap up the first video here and pick up with a general overview of genetics in the second video.